I'm on the programme, I suspect, but let me introduce myself very briefly. My name is Tim Clement-Jones, Lord Clement-Jones. I'm a partner in DLA Piper, the law firm. We have very strong interests in and with Iraq. And we've been long supporters of economic development, particularly in the Kurdistan region. And I'm also a parliamentarian and a member of and vice chairman of the all-party Kurdistan region group in our Westminster Parliament. So I have two hats that I take off and put on a regular basis, just to confuse everybody. And I'm really here in multiple capacities today, and I'm delighted, and it's a privilege to be here on the same platform as Dr. Ashti and our very distinguished group of guests today. And I know that quite a number of you will have a lot of questions to ask after these presentations. So we are, as Bayan wanted us to be, I hope, clever, sharp and informative, all in the space of 5 minutes. And I'm just going to introduce our panel before they speak, and I'm going to introduce them in the order in which they are going to talk. First of all, I'm very pleased to see again Dr. Khalid Saleh, who's an advisor to Dr. Ashti Harami on constitutional matters, but I've met him in many previous incarnations. He was previously an advisor to Prime Minister Nechavan Barzani, and formerly he was the official spokesman for the KRG, and he played a great role in communicating the government's policies to people within the Kurdistan region and indeed outside. He's a political scientist. He's been a constitutional advisor to the Kurdistan National Assembly, and he's also got an academic background as a senior lecturer in politics, specialising in the Middle East at the University of Southern Denmark. So quite a CV. Then moving on, we have Dr. Seong-Hoon Kim, who's the Senior Executive Vice President and Board Director of the Korea National Oil Corporation. He has had a very long and distinguished career with the Korean National Oil Corporation, and he has a PhD. I should have called him doctor, I hope I did. And he's a PhD from the Seoul National University, and he's our second speaker and also a sponsor of today's session. Thirdly, I have Ahmed Saeed, who is president of the oil and gas group of Forbes Manhattan, who are a private merchant bank operating in 22 countries and with investments in the oil and gas sector in Kurdistan. And then fourthly, we have to speak to us, we have Brad Camp, whose CV I have temporarily mislaid. So here we are. He's a senior advisor of KAR Oil and Gas, the leading private sector Iraqi oil and gas company. In this role, he leads the strategic planning processes for the company and advises senior company leaders on management systems. With KAR, Mr. Camp has been key in developing the Erbil refinery project, which you heard about, the first major refinery in the Kurdistan region and the fourth largest refinery in Iraq. So I think we're going to hear some very concrete issues from them. So first of all, speaking from the platform here, could I ask Dr. Khalid to talk to us? Do you want to talk to from there? That may be more convenient. Okay.
It's not going to be easy to talk after Dr. Ashti. Living as a shadow for 4 years has been difficult enough. So this is a more difficult task I have been given. For those of you who were here with us about 4 years ago, in September 2006, we dared to gather for the first time where we tried to lay out some of our initial thoughts about what Kurdistan oil policy will be. And we were probably among the first to make sure that our draft model contract went public for comments and came back. That was a fantastic experience. And today, seeing so many people coming back, being part of the progress, part of the achievement, some newcomers chasing now for talks with Dr. Ashti, is just thrilling experience. I can just tell you more about that than anything else. But Make it short, said Bayan, and also the chairman for the session. Kurdistan's experience is interesting from, if you look at its context. In 2003, Kurdistan had a very difficult context to start with, partly because of the devastation of the 80s and the sanctions of the 90s. The context was very, very demanding. Shortly after, when Iraq liberation became reality, what is important to attribute to Kurdistan's success partly is also the institutions and the systems in Kurdistan did not collapse compared with the rest of Iraq. That made a huge psychological impact on the process. Keeping things intact helped Kurdistan to survive in a different way than the rest of Iraq. That allowed the government to build on policies, structures, infrastructures, and ideas that helped Kurdistan to strengthen its path it somehow started very uncertain. What came out of this for 4 years we have, maybe 8 years if you go back to the beginning of 2000 and a couple of years after, is the stability. Stability has become a hallmark of our region. Stability has become a commodity. We use it in most of our promotions. If you look at the environment, the surrounding, then you can appreciate the level of stability being achieved, because we are not only in a very difficult environment, we also lived through a very difficult process and period in Iraq as a whole. What also contributed to this image of Kurdistan as a stable entity is, of course, political settlement. The idea of going away from conflict resolution by force into peaceful resolution made Kurdistan a little bit different in the Middle East context. I usually use that example of Kirkuk as a very good example of reminding people how different things were being played out. Particularly in 2003, when people went back to disputed territories, their homes were confiscated. People went back, and they are still waiting for their issues to be solved. But there is no revenge demanded from those refugees or returnees. That's a particularly distinct way of settling the issues in a peaceful way. People are still waiting to get back to their homes, and they hope that the constitution and the political process will allow it, rather than making violence as the only tool to use. You have also seen transitions of the government in our political system. You have had peaceful handovers. Now you have a peaceful parliamentary process with a vibrant opposition element in it. I guess I can't dwell after Mr. Sanjari's presentation about safety and security, but what is remarkable is Kurdistan's safety and security is very little studied, how this region has managed to create its safety the way it has. You have to think about Kurdistan as an era in which revolt was the hallmark of our history. People were armed to defend themselves, to run away, to protect their lives. And coming back, if you look at the transition from military struggle into peaceful political system, it's a remarkable achievement, and we don't really appreciate it until we have a proper study about this process. What also contributed to this Kurdistan's success is the initiatives for legislation. In addition to the investment law, we have also managed, and we discussed it even publicly before we passed the Kurdistan oil and gas law. That was an exercise in itself, being praised by a lot of NGOs and UN organizations, because we made all the drafts available before it went for voting. These together has added credibility to Kurdistan. Kurdistan's credibility is different compared with 5 years ago. In terms of doing business, in terms of finding peaceful settlements, also in terms of trying to come up with modern legislations. So the credibility is now contributing to what's been achieved until now. These elements have had spillover effects. The most remarkable spillover effect we can talk about today is our relationship with Turkey and its improvement. A few years ago, we could hardly talk and travel through those areas without difficulties. Today, because of the oil policy, because of all the initiatives taken in the oil industry, oil and gas industry, Turkey is now becoming our reliable partner in this process and is strengthening also our development in this area. What we hope these elements of spillover effects, developments, credibility is to contribute to our continuity of the present policy. Our hope in the government is we will continue on the same path in order to attract more investment, but also in order to attract more interest to Kurdistan region. I think I have passed my 5 minutes, if I'm not wrong. Thank you.